Can we talk about influencers for a minute? I actually hope that you're an influencer and understand how influential you can be with your audience, but also how the future is kind of unfolding and what that means for how you monetize what you do and how you do it. My name is Chris Milton. I run a marketing agency. It's called 323 Media. We also have The Content Machine, which is another marketing agency that's focused on content marketing. And this is actually a follow up to a blog post that I did many years ago where we talked about re influence and how you can create more money as an influencer by understanding where your influence currently exists and then transposing it into many different places. And what I want to dig into today is kind of how things are evolving. Mainly this is because of AI. Mainly this is because of the search engines and the social media platforms' response to AI and AI created content. And it's also because you as an influencer have a completely new type of competitor, and that's a virtual influencer. Something that has been completely created as an animation to represent a brand. And some of them that are out there are really cool and unbelievable how accurate they are in terms of staying on brand, which is staying in character. So let's kind of break down where things came from and where they're going. And this is a topic I would love to break out more, but I honestly, I don't have the research to be able to really get into it in a format that is short enough for a YouTube video. It would probably be like a long documentary or, something that could be the title of a book. But here we go. Let's do a condensed version. So if we go back in time and look at when the first time influence in the public eye was used, and that was actually with anybody who was famous. The idea that you had a movie star in an advert was amazing. It instantly gave you credibility that somebody who was famous, who had a lot of people that respected them, would endorse your product, meant that it was a better product. And you could almost buy that influence automatically because you'd be able to get to the point of saying, my product has this beautiful poster that can go as a billboard anywhere in the world, and my product will be recognized and be synonymous with today's most popular movie star. That evolved as the media evolved, and how much there was that more and more companies could leverage with people that were being shown in the spotlight. And the evolution of this, I think, really started as television became much more popular for sports. And the more coverage that the sports got meant that there was a lot more that you could do with athlete endorsements. And that still continues to this day. I mean, the biggest, most interesting, I guess you could say, is the movie Air, and actually following that and the documentation of how they signed the deal with Michael Jordan to create what is now a massive brand. Brand Jordan was grown because of that one single decision to make the Air Jordan break the rules with the NBA's uniform guidelines and pay the fines. And it is an incredible journey that, Michael Jordan has been on following his career as a businessman, but also the interesting part of seeing how they evolved and how Nike took that from being one athlete with one shoe playing on one team and grew it from that personal brand and that personal influence into Team Jordan, and the first athletes that were handpicked to wear Michael Jordan's brand while they were still competitors. It's fascinating to me. And beyond basketball, that same time, Team Jordan was breaking into boxing, and Roy Jones Jr. was the first athlete to be sponsored by Team Jordan in the boxing ring. It was Derek Jeter on the baseball field, it was Randy Moss on the football field, and it was unbelievable to see how each of these players was influential in their own game and had the ability to, just by rocking someone's kicks and appearing in some ads, create massive, like billions of dollars of sales of merchandise. And so those brand endorsements became incredibly important and incredibly useful for any brand that wanted to be either endorsed, have the endorsement of an athlete that was obviously driven by performance and something that was helping them be at the top of their game is very something positive that a lot of consumers resonate with, or being able to be the official whatever you want of that sports league. And we've seen this with some of the brands where they'll go out like Gatorade and sponsor specific different athletes, but they'll also find a way to be part of the league so that their athletes will never have their competitor's beverage in their hand. And I think it's really interesting when you break down and see how this has now evolved. And we've talked about sponsorship. So the athlete endorsements is one thing, but then there's the sponsorship, the pay to play for the association. Now, in some cases, this can be a really positive thing with just, a cash transaction that allows you to fuel another organization's growth, whether this being a gala or a league like the NBA or a huge conference. There's opportunities for sponsorship and visibility with the level of growth and audience that particular league or event has. But it also works in the same way with product placement, right? The most popular movies of all time have often had a very specific or very unique product placement where the lead actor is eating or drinking or consuming or, being a customer at their brand. And these deals are incredibly interesting. One of my favorite channels that does really great clips is Chris Kohler News. He did an ET one. It is really funny. I'll link it below in terms of how much money M&M's missed out on because of turning down ET. And that's a really interesting example. There's many examples with Coke and Pepsi, with audiences being divided because of how much they loved the movie, and would that sway their loyalty to Coca-Cola or Pepsi. And all of these things led us to a point where social media suddenly started to compete for that mainstream media. Everything that I've talked about so far is all about mainstream media. And so there wasn't an opportunity for anybody to create their own thing and create their own audience without leveraging one of those platforms, whether it be TV, movies, magazines, audio. There's a big gate in front of a lot of people who had aspirations of being able to break through. Suddenly we had people that were on social media who wouldn't just be connecting with each other. They would be opening up their audience to be able to have followers that never knew them, and their first impression was through social media. Rather than having your digital presence connecting you and expanding on what you did in person, it allows you to have followers. And you as an influencer know that. You know that your audience has a lot of information, your audience has a lot of power, and you have a lot of opportunities to be able to put products in front of them that can make their life better. But the place where things really changed in my mind is when certain industries that were having problems advertising found that personal referrals and personal references and endorsements didn't fall into the same advertising guidelines and mandates. Specifically, I think the one that stood out the most to me was with supplements, and the amount of supplements that were not allowed to be advertised with Google, with TV, because it didn't meet any particular guidelines, and in often cases it was really misunderstanding of what the product did, and that being felt like it was a claim that could help you in a medical way. There's a lot of different protein powders and supplements that went specifically from zero to a big brand because they leveraged fitness influencers. And this was where those deals really started to take a completely different shape, especially when Instagram started coming around. Fitness is one of the fastest growing categories, and it helps that the research, this number's fluctuated slightly over the years, but that 83% of people will trust an influencer or a review just as much as they will trust a personal recommendation from a friend or family. So the opportunity is there to be able to say, hey, what influencer can relate to my audience, and be able to start understanding who exactly we're trying to target and why this product is for them, because they know the audience probably better than we do, and we own this product. And so that created this massive opportunity. This turned into a big deal because a lot of people started building their own personal brands on each of the different social platforms, just like people had been building their own websites. The problem here is that some of those social networks didn't exist anymore and they shut down or they got bought out and kind of got killed or chopped up, and it didn't really last anymore. The biggest one is all of the comedians that started going big during the Vine days, and then Vine just closed up shop one day, and part of it was because of an influencer deal of each of their creators not having the right share. But it was really interesting to see how that wave of comedians being dispersed onto all the different platforms showed that the instability of each of these platforms, pretty well all of them being venture backed, left a big gap with security. And not enough people built a website that could perform, even though the numbers in certain spaces, like in the fashion field, the amount that somebody would make by having a fashion blog on the affiliate side far surpasses what they would make with similar numbers on the social media side. And I never understood why this wasn't leveraged more. This wasn't leveraged more by local news anchors that should have had a website and social media 10 years before they actually did. Or why somebody who is suddenly going past 10,000, 100,000 followers wouldn't have a website that worked because it didn't facilitate a transaction. There's a big gap between what you're able to do with social media versus what you're able to do on a platform that you already own, or a list of your audience that you own by having an email list. And this gap is something that I think really hurt a lot of people. And for you as an influencer who's watching this, I hope you enjoyed the history lesson, but the bottom line here is that I think you left a lot of money on the table over the past few years, and we should change that. So let's shift gears from where we are now in terms of where we're going in the future. The most powerful thing that I think you can have is the ability right now to be able to have an audience that you understand, that you control, and that you have the ability to connect with without any sort of filtering. There's only one main way that I think that is never going to change, and that's email. I think having an email list is probably the most valuable way to keep track of your subscribers, your followers, but it's also the way that you're able to understand that you can have a message go out without any formatting restrictions based on length or crop or the type of click or action that they need to take in order for them to, click on your link or purchase something from you. You can create the most frictionless marketing environment with email, and it's powerful. And I think that's something that a lot of influencers need to be able to understand. There should always be a reason for you not just to create engagement on the platform that you're working with, where your largest audience is, but try to get them into one place. It's not about being able to say, I want to start a YouTube channel, I want to start an Instagram, I want to really grow my X or my Pinterest. No, it's not about that. It's about how do you funnel from any and all of those platforms to a place that you're in control of, and that's your website and your email list. Recently, I've been surprised to know how long it took before acquisitions were happening where email lists were actually part of the valuation of assets that are being understood, and understood if they're monetized or unmonetized, and that actually being part of the deals. But I also think that there's a really interesting understanding when somebody looks at an influencer today who has a really great following that's attractive to consumer packaged goods, and how their audience size is on YouTube versus Instagram versus Snapchat versus Facebook, and how that has zero correlation. In a perfect world, you'd look at it and say, if someone's subscribing to me on YouTube, they should also be following me on X. They should be in my audience and following me on every other platform possible. They should be subscribed to my newsletter. Absolutely. But if you can only do one of those things, it's getting them onto your newsletter. If you were to run a promotion right now, that promotion 100% should be about you growing your email list. And I think that's something that is really missing the boat. The second part of it is with the rise of AI and how things have been changing with search engine algorithms and how rich snippets of content have started to really take over, but also with shopping becoming much more involved in the first page of Google results because of how Gemini can scan and use the reviews that you've already been creating and writing to promote and monetize for Google with the right shopping tools. There's a bigger opportunity for you to have a direct marketing channel that I think will be worth more than social influence ever will be as we move into the next 2 or 3 years. And some of that can already be captured with affiliate programs. Some of that can already be captured with different programs that you can do as collabs with certain brands and have everything monetized on your own website. But I think it's really going to be about where you're driving traffic to on email. And unfortunately, that's not something that is really glamorous. It's not the next cool bells and whistles, but it is something that you can do and set up as a breeze. Now, as you have that being set up, I think you need to do it in the right way. I think there's a lot of opportunity for you to be able to repurpose content onto many other platforms, but I also think there's probably a lot more out there of what you can manage to grow with your brand. You've made it this far. You've grown something that's significant, that's creating income. Now, how do you turn that into something that's going to be a lot bigger, a lot badder? How do you make it into the next 5, 10 years, growing at a pace that is almost shocking to everybody? Well, let's figure that out. As you can tell, I'm super passionate about this. And if you're interested, get in touch with me. Our services that we have for B2B clients that help them with their marketing is something that scales nowhere near to where an influencer can. We have, 15,000 followers or something like that on Instagram. And yes, it generates clients. We have very few followers and subscribers on YouTube. Our shorts get thousands of views. Our videos get less than 100 views, and yet that turns into clients because it's quality before quantity. And I feel like that's something that you need to be able to understand and see that there's an opportunity to monetize an audience of any size. So if you're interested in how you can grow with specific services, how you can grow with specific growth, or how you can repurpose your content onto multiple different platforms, check out this video as the next thing that you should watch.